say the throttle was stuck open.
Throttle stuck, or you got one hell of an air leak. In the last episode of the Cheap Bike Challenge, myself, Dave, and Mike took our $500 bikes for a great ride in the bush. Unfortunately, Dave's Kawasaki had some serious problems, and at the very end of that ride, we did discover that Mike's DT had an oil leak. We didn't show you that in the last video, but we would soon discover that the reasons for it were quite obvious. The plan for today's episode is to fix any of the previously identified problems, fix any of the new problems, hopefully get some luggage on these bikes, and then do some last minute prep for our big camping trip in just 2 weeks. In the last episode, we suspected that Dave's bike had an electrical problem, seeing as it would die under load and only when it was incredibly hot. Some of you so kindly suggested that it was a float bowl problem, but seeing as we had already gone through the carbs and replaced all the fuel lines, we had effectively ruled that out, and some investigation revealed some clear electrical issues. Ignition coils aren't supposed to have holes in them and aren't supposed to be leaking. So we threw in a known good one, took it for a test ride, and unfortunately, the same thing happened in the same spot. So we replaced the only electrical component left, and for all of you that commented condenser, congratulations, you were right. A new condenser cleared up most of Dave's problems. Okay, fresh points, fresh condenser.
And new gaskets.
New gaskets.
So that it holds some oil.
Random coil off a different bike. Let's see if he's fixed.
Whoa! I'd say the throttle was stuck open.
Throttle stuck, or you got one hell of an air leak.
Whoa!
Okay, not as confident anymore, eh?
No, now I just trashed the piston and everything.
After Dave fixed his unfortunate throttle cable problem, he went for a few rides, and yes, the KE was running better than ever. We're all feeling pretty confident at this point, so I didn't do a lot of filming. And unfortunately, I have no footage of what happened next, so please enjoy this incredibly high-budget reenactment. I was feeling pretty confident in my DT, so I decided to ride it down to the border to pick up a parcel. I shut off the bike at customs, talked to them, and then the bike started up just fine. I then rode maybe 500 feet to the parcel depot where I shut it off. When I returned to the bike, I tried to start it and discovered that it was seized rock solid. Rather than try to fix it right here, I decided to do the walk of shame back to the Canadian border. At customs, the border officer kind of laughed at me when I told him that my day was going very bad, and he asked how I was going to get home. I said I'm probably going to get a ride with someone. He let me back across the border, and I pulled over, called Dave, and shot this video. Damn it. While waiting for Dave to come and save me, I tried freeing up the bike by running and dumping the clutch. Didn't seem to do anything, except as soon as Dave arrived, and he asked to see what the problem was, the bike could now magically turn over again. Odd. Anyways, we loaded it in the truck, took it back to my place, and that's where the investigation began. That looks okay. Cylinder really doesn't look too terrible. So that kind of leads me to believe maybe it was some sort of bottom end problem, but I'm going to inspect a little more clearly here. So it looked okay at the cylinder. So I took off the clutch cover, and what I found is that this crank seal is half out. So that would have made it really lean, could have seized it, and there's quite a bit of up and down play on these bearings, so didn't really want to, but I might be splitting the cases on this bad boy. I think my budget's gone. Alright, I've done a little more investigation on this thing, and what I actually think happened is when I went to the store, the float got stuck, filled the crankcase with fuel, causing it to hydrolock so it wouldn't kick over. When I tried running with the bike and dumping the clutch, that created enough pressure to pop out this seal, freeing over the bike. That would explain why the crankcase oil I drained is full of gasoline, and that's why the bike seized and then started running. Now, in theory, I could fix the car, put the seal back in, and the bike would be the same as it was. Unfortunately, I can feel up and down play in this crank bearing. I have no idea about the big end bearing yet, so I'm going to pull off the cylinder, and I have a sneaking suspicion my main bearing over on the stator side isn't too hot, so I'm going to investigate. I think I'm going to pull the engine out of the bike here, and I got 7 days to get this thing in tip-top shape for the ride, so let's see how it goes. Alright, turns out this is only held in the bike with 3 bolts, so that was easy. Now it's time to start seeing how our rod looks, if it's got lots of play, and what our bearing looks like under this flywheel. I have a feeling it's not going to be pretty, so let's get into it. I want to see if you can capture how much free play this has. That is very, very loose. Alright, until it sat for a while, there's quite a bit of pitting there. So definitely going to hone it, get some crosshatch in there. Nothing too crazy, but that should clean it up. Alright, piston. Yeah, not great. Having established that both of the ball bearings on the crank were pretty well shot, and the cylinder had a lot of pitting on it, I determined that at some point this bike had clearly sat and gotten some moisture in it. I made the decision at this point to continue with my teardown, split the cases, replace those bearings with some reputable Nancy bearings I got from an industrial supply store, and I made the questionable decision to replace my seals with some really cheap ones I got on Amazon that I had already purchased. I figured there's no way they could be worse than my dry 40-year-old seals. Rebuilding this engine in this low buck state meant that I was going to be over my budget. So me and the boys decided that there would be a penalty of having to push the bike 10 feet uphill for every dollar over budget that I went. With that out of the way, the biggest limitation to my engine rebuild actually became parts availability, seeing as I only had 6 days to get it done, and in rural British Columbia, a lot of these parts are a long ways away. It would have been nice to replace the big end bearing on the connecting rod and actually split the crankshaft, because I'm sure that bearing, even though it doesn't have a lot of play in it, isn't fantastic. I got lucky. It turns out I actually already had a small end bearing for this bike because it's the same one that my Yamaha snowmobile uses. Overall, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that posting mechanical things on YouTube results in all of the armchair mechanics coming out. I just want to remind you guys, we've never claimed to be professional mechanics. We're just 3 guys buying these cheap bikes, learning lots about them, rebuilding them to the best of our ability, and having a lot of fun doing it. Alright, so it's actually kind of a miracle this engine worked as good as it did. First of all, our crank bearings, which we know are bad, but hopefully you can see that on camera. If I hold the inner race, look at all that free play. And you can actually hear it when you shake them.
That's both sides that are bad. Then my piston obviously doesn't look too hot, but kind of surprisingly, considering how good it ran and we had 120 psi, is this second ring's actually stuck. So
Obviously, it would have been nice to replace this piston, or at the very least, get some new rings in this bike, but unfortunately, that just wasn't an option. So I cleaned up the piston and rings the best I could, gave the cylinder a quick hone, and put it all back together. Obviously, less than ideal, but it should get me through the trip. The DT started up and ran pretty nice, so I took it for a test ride and we were back in business. While I had been locked in my basement rebuilding this engine for the last 3 days, Mike had been doing some work on his DT.
Well, we got her all torn apart again. We've got our kickstart assembly, and as you can see, the spring is broken. So we've got a new spring here. Gonna try to put this in, slap her back together, fill her back with coolant, put a fresh air filter in, and oh yes, some brand new brake shoes for the back, because that is sorely needed. Should be fun. Alrighty, got her all back together, got coolant, got my transmission oil in there. Let's experience the joys of having a kickstart return spring. Oh yeah.
With Mike's bike all prettied up, I then went over to Dave's to see the creative luggage solution that he had devised.
Hell yeah, we're good to go.
Sheet metal.
Custom rack.
Yeah, can you see the sheet
What is
metal?
that made from?
Oh, it was from a garage door opener case. And if you read on it there, it says 1/3 horsepower.
Ooh.
1/3 horsepower. So look
Wow.
out. Look out. And then back here, I just ordered a set of these for my Suzuki street bike.
These are actually pretty legit looking.
Yeah, and I thought, oh, those are actually pretty good. Yeah, they're like proper ones, right? And this side doesn't have the pipe. So,
Yeah.
I just see some zip ties
Nice.
there. And once I fill this up and I strap it down hard, it'll be less flimsy there.
Yeah, hose clamps are a nice touch.
I went and bought those from Lordco today.
I think you're set. I think your luggage is the
I
real
think so,
deal.
Too, yeah.
Nice.
What I know, this bike used to start with no choke at all.
Yeah.
But now that it's getting a little colder in the mornings, I got to use choke and I got to hold it out for a while.
Oh,
For
yeah,
30
same.
seconds. Good 30 seconds. And then it seems to go fine.
Nice. With all of the bikes now running and fixed up, and Dave having some luggage figured out, it was really looking like we were going to be absolutely unstoppable for our camping trip. Until this happened. Was just taking the DT for a test ride, doing some tuning because we leave in 2 days. It's running pretty good, and then losing power. All of a sudden, died. Doesn't have any compression, so gonna go pick it up with the truck. Can take to the shop, check it out, but I'm definitely fearing the worst, thinking that I probably melted down a piston or glued the rings to the piston as well. So let's go get the bike and see what happened. See what we got. Yep. Yep, let's get a light on the subject for you. There's a hole in that piston. Ooh. Eee. Wow. Oh, that is rough. So this thing got leaned right out. That sucks. 1978 Yamaha DT 175. Taken from us far too soon by the curse of pre-ignition. Either caused by an incredibly lean condition, either from an air leak or incorrect flow height, or by ignition too far advanced. The reason we will soon discover in the future. But for now, the DT 175 must rest, and the Lakeman ADV crew must come up with a solution in order to be able to ride on their trip in just 2 days. Fixing the DT is infeasible in this amount of time. Rescheduling the trip, also impractical, as they've already booked the time off work, and there's no way they'll be able to get the DT fixed before winter. The solution is what the DT would have wanted. Find another bike in just a day or two. Even if it isn't ideal, it must work. For now, may we honor the DT 175 in all it has accomplished, and rest assured that someday, in the near future, it will return, it will have another day in the sun, and it will ride free on the trails once again. Yamaha DT 175, you were a good bike, and I'm sorry for what I've done to you. After consoling my loss for a bit, I hit Facebook Marketplace, and it pulled through with this 125cc Honda Clone pit bike that was all around actually pretty awful. Rear tire was bald, lucky for me Dave had one, and it only ran with the choke on, and badly at that. With only a day until we left, I set out to work on making this bike a whole lot better. Someone has done some serious science with this throttle cable. I think that's a piece of fuel hose that they're using. Well, it seems to work pretty good, so I guess I'm gonna run it. Alright, battery box rubs the chain, so gonna get that moved out of the way and solve some more problems. With the bike now running somewhat acceptably, I set out on installing the pizza cutter of a tire I got from Dave. Right now, you probably have two big questions. One, how much did this bike cost? Well, I paid $200 for it, and although that sounds cheap, I want you to consider that this bike's almost 20 years old, probably only cost $1,000 brand new, and is in all-around terrible shape. I may have actually paid too much for it. And the second thing you've probably noticed or have already written a rude comment about is the fact that this bike isn't street legal. Obviously that's not ideal. This was somewhat unavoidable given the time frame we had, and ultimately our camping trip was going to be about 95% off-road anyways, so I'm just gonna have to take the loss, truck this thing to the start of the ride, and I get it, it's not ideal. Some of you aren't gonna like it. I didn't like this solution either, but it got us out, and it was tons of fun, and it's still cheap. I was surprised by how cleanly I was able to get all of my camping gear and tools mounted to the bike, and with it basically ready to go, I had no time for a test ride, so I just rode it around my yard a couple times, and then threw it in Dave's truck, And that's when the real fun began.
I can't believe I got everything on that.
I'm so excited. I woke up at like 4 o'clock and it's like, okay, you got to try to sleep a little more, you know.
Same.
5 o'clock, I was so excited.
I'm excited. This is going to be great.